Excellency, I'm an Ikore man from Rivers State. My dear colleagues, I rise to speak against this bill. I say so because, strictly speaking, there is no bill before this House. And if we are supporting a bill, we should support one that is in line with our rules, that is in line with the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. We sit today to discuss the appropriation bill of FCT. Therefore, this House is sitting as the legislature of FCT Abuja. And Mr. Speaker, my dear colleagues, the relevant section of the Constitution should be Section 122 of our Constitution. And if you permit me, I will read. Section 122 provides that if the appropriation bill in respect of any financial year has not been passed into law by the beginning of the financial year, the governor, in the circumstance the Minister of FCT, may authorize the withdrawal of monies from the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the state for the purpose of meeting expenditure necessary to carry on the services of the government for a period not exceeding 6 months or until the coming into operation of the law, whichever is earlier. Whichever is earlier. Clearly, Mr. Speaker, my dear colleagues, 6 months is earlier. And on the face of the bill, this appropriation bill seeks our consent for a period covering from 1st January and ending 30th December 2017, less than 3 months. Although the Leader of the House, in moving this motion, told us that this bill ought to have come 3 weeks earlier, that it was an error of his office. Accepting without conceding, our dear leader, that this bill came even a month earlier, 2 months earlier, the bill is unconstitutional. It is outside the period provided by the Constitution. Now, even where we decide to keep that aside and we say we should go on, there are still fundamental questions to be asked. For the period that the minister had continued to spend, the Constitution provides that the amount spent must be proportionate to the amount authorized for the previous year. Do we have any information to that effect? There is none before us. Can we sit down here and appropriate 222 billion naira unconstitutionally? That is the question I want us to answer. And then of the 222, my dear colleagues, capital project takes a whopping sum of about 128 billion. And these capital projects are assumed to be fulfilled within 3 months. Is it possible? Of course it is not possible. So I think that we need to step down this bill, my dear colleagues and Mr. Speaker, and send it back to the appropriate committee, that is the FCT committee. Let us be convinced of the expenditure from January up to October and ensure that it is in tandem with the appropriation for last year. That is the least we can do in the circumstance. Else, Mr. Speaker, the bill itself is not in line with our Constitution. I will therefore move that we refuse the second reading of this bill in the interest of our law, because we must begin to be responsible in public administration. We cannot see an unconstitutional action and we sweep it under the carpet. Let us be seen to at least take steps to correct these issues. Else it will continue. If we say that that has been the tradition, what it means is that next year we will also see the same issue coming before this House again. So I will urge us to please take steps to ensure that we begin to govern in line with the rule of law provision. The first limb says, if the appropriation bill in respect of any financial year appropriation bill has not been passed into law by the beginning of the financial year, the governor may authorize the withdrawal of monies from the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the state for the purpose of meeting expenditure necessary to carry on services of the government for a period not exceeding 6 months or until the coming into operation of the law, whichever is earlier. That is the first limb. Provided that the withdrawal in respect of any such period shall not exceed the amount authorized to be withdrawn from the Consolidated Revenue Fund. Mr. Speaker, the first limb is clearly on appropriation, the entire appropriation. The second limb has to do with recurrent, that where you now spend, you must ensure that within the 6 months that you have spent recurrent, not capital. For capital, you must budget within 6 months. For recurrent, you can spend. And where you are spending within that period, it must be in tandem with the amount appropriated for such recurrent the previous year. So I raised an objection that...
Okay, honorable colleagues, in order to save us from this legal gymnastics and constitutional debate, Honorable Chinda, can you tell this House when we passed FCT budget last year?
Mr. Speaker, I am looking at the law before us, which clearly states the period under discourse. So we can pass the budget only yesterday, but if a new law is before us, which says that it will operate between today and tomorrow, that's what I'm looking at, Mr. Speaker.
No, it's a very simple question. Now, why are you answering the question? When did we pass FCT budget last year? And if you do that, then I want you to look at the Constitution to tell us what is the definition of a financial year in the Constitution. Then we will resolve these difficulties that we seem to have.
Mr. Speaker, I cannot specifically tell you when we passed the FCT budget for last year. But clearly, from the Constitution, the financial year is January to December. And the law that we are discussing today also captures that it applies for January to December.
Okay, I've heard you and noted your point. Leader, is there any need to... No need. And then, see, we just have to understand one thing. By virtue of the rules that we have all sworn to uphold here, if you look at page 74, even though it's not addressing the issue of FCT budget, but it's talking about appropriations generally, it appears that under these rules, the House does not even have a discretion not to pass an appropriation bill that is being read for the second time. Let me take you to page 74. If you are there, you see sub-rule 5 on page 74. Yeah, it said when the bill has been read, that is talking about appropriation bill, has been read the second time, it shall. There's no option there. Shall is mandatory. It shall be committed to the Committee on Appropriations. The Standing Committee of the House shall for the purpose, and so on and so forth. So it appears that when it comes to issues of appropriation bill, we have the latitude to debate. Each member can take 5 minutes according to our rules. But we don't have the discretion to say, no, we will not pass it. That is the interpretation of the rules as I understand. Though I understand the point that Honorable Chinda is laboring to make, and that is why it was agreed that the 2018 budget will be submitted in October this year, and so that we can beat the deadline of January. And then our financial years can now run from January to December, as alluded to in the Constitution. But the Constitution doesn't say it's January to December. It said January, preferably January to December, or any other period of 12 months period that the National Assembly may fix. So it's fluid. And it appears that we were running a financial year that is from May to May, because last year's budget expired in May. And so it all calls for collective efforts on our part to ensure that we narrow this thing down, and the financial year now commences from January to December. That is even the goal we are setting for ourselves, so that the financial year can actually tally with the financial year of most corporate organizations in Nigeria who are rendering their statements, corporate statements in December. And we'll run away from having a budget running from the period of May to May of each financial year. So really, if we go that way, we cannot escape from blame, rather. So I guess it's better for us to let sleeping dogs lie for the moment and then try to arrest this situation as we go into next year. So having said that, I think I'll put the question. And the question is that the bill be now read a second time. Those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those against it say nay. The ayes have it.